everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Afrikan Diaspora Dialogue Podcast. I am your host, T. Jamal, joined by a panel of intelligent guests. I have my sister, Michelle. How are you?
Hey, brother, I'm doing pretty good. Feeling nice and, relaxed this weekend.
That's great to hear. I have my sister, Kim. Kim, how are you doing? Dr. Kim.
Thank you for the invitation. Less relaxed, but I'm well. Busy weekend.
And I have my brother, Keita. How are you?
Yeah, right from Sierra Leone. This is Keita Mustafa. I am good, and it's a blessed weekend. It's a pleasure being here.
So,
yeah,
the great thing about this episode this week is that nobody on this panel is currently in the United States aside from myself, which is the beauty of technology. I love it. And so I want to kick it off. And, our last episode of the podcast was called Don't Like. This is Don't Like Part 2. And what we mean by don't like is there are these myths and these consistent beliefs that people across the African diaspora, Black people, don't like one another. And there is this constant questioning, especially on my part, of where do these feelings come from? How do they develop? How are they manifesting over time? Like, how are they persisting? Because it's not like something that happened in one era and then it was like, oh, that was foolish, and then we moved past it. It's it's still something that you still hear people reverberate. And a lot of the times, and really, this is kind of the reason that the Afrikan Diaspora Dialogue as a live in-person event was created in the first place. This was the motive behind it, because I saw all of this misinformation being spread, and I was like, somebody do something about it. And me being me, I don't wait for somebody else to do it. It's like the somebody is me because I noticed it.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at everything. If something comes to your attention, then you are probably the person who is supposed to be, who is supposed to take initiative on that, or even just be a part of the solution. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to know how to network and pull people together. And I am fortunate enough to be surrounded by intelligent minds, so I don't have to carry that beautiful burden alone. So I have you guys here, and I want to start off with Keita. Keita, you weren't here the last time we spoke about this, and we spoke about Akon. Akon had an interview on Vlad TV that kind of went viral, and some people were upset with Akon because he said some statements like African Americans need to get past enslavement, because people in Senegal had gotten past enslavement. They were, their minds were on other things. But some people who in the diaspora took offense to it because they were like, we can't just get past it because we haven't really properly grieved it. Even though I think a lot of the times they took Akon out of context, there was a lot of nuance to what he was saying. But from your perspective, Keita, what are your feelings about enslavement, and how do you feel in speaking with people in Sierra Leone, the overall thoughts are about enslavement and what you guys learned about it, like the enslavement of African people?
Well, in the first place, enslavement has been part of many other cultures. So, in as much as we are talking about the transatlantic slave trade, It is something that has been viewed demonic, very much barbaric. So this perception of us in Africa has not been good about it. There was a time I was somewhere and they played the root Kunta Kinte stuff, and that really, caused havoc, and because people really went mad because many hear about the slave trade and illiteracy stuff, and many have not read history about how their people were maltreated. So when the Kunta Kinte stuff revealed some of those things that were in practice, people went mad at many white people who were around, and he wanted to, attack some of those white people to take them as slave masters, some of those people who enslaved our people. And that was too crazy. It didn't make much, it didn't make sense anyway. It was evil. So the perception of the slave trade in Africa is not something that is good. It's demonic. It's like the same way you perceive it is the same way we perceive it too. The problem is that many Africans have not, because this is just, the world is now modern, and many have not dwell into or delve into the history to really learn about it. Unless few of us who went to school and learn about the transatlantic slave trade, who know about some of those evil tricks of people who enslave our people. But many people who do not know it just have slave, the word slave, which in my language is jong. It's not a word that is suitable. It is offensive to tell someone he or she is a slave. So when you call someone a slave, like, it's offensive here. So meaning it's not something any African would love to hear about, or maybe to be, enslaved. So it's a bad thing. So like presently, in that slave trade, it's nothing in our diction. I mean, we don't talk about it anymore because the global community is coming together to kill all of those stuff, even though there are different forms of slavery in different part of the world. Yeah, but in as much as we are talking about that kind of enslavement that used to happen, especially Americans who are predominantly known to have enslaved or African people. What we think about it now is another form of maltreatment, like some of what African Americans go through, like the protest that was, done in America for the guy who was, who was killed by the policeman, and it's happening again and again, and you are against it because you see it live. And of course, we feel like this is the result. This is as a result of the trade that happened. Even when there's people enslaved us up to now, they don't respect us. So this thing goes in our mind, and that's, we feel your pain. Exactly. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So, and that's interesting because what you hit on is something that we continuously keep going on, is that we have a lack of knowledge of one another's history since we have been, dispersed from each other, right? So here in the United States, there's a lot of misinformation about what Africa is, how it looks, what the realities are. And so when it comes down to things that are going on in the US, the Caribbean, and, South America and Central, wherever Black people are in the diaspora, there's a lot of just untapped resources of knowledge, right? And so, and what we have to understand is, like, Sierra Leone was colonized by the British. So your education, even though you are in Africa, your education is based on the system of people who colonized you. And so they're not going to always give you the full information to, like you said, when people saw Roots, the information had been so gone for so long about the realities of what happened to our people that people like went crazy and were like ready to go into act over, something that had happened a long time ago, where the effects are still felt today. So that's I just want to, after everyone speaks, kind of talk to the audience and talk to even the people on the panel about how these things persist. When we talk about there being division in the African diaspora, and then we kind of look at it as this broad stroke and not really understanding all of the elements that go into play, and the fact that it's not unintentional. It's very intentional that we don't know about one another. It's very easy, once you have a lack of knowledge, to go into a place of not really caring about, or really taking on the empathetic thought of what other people are going through, even though, we are rooted in the same. I want to go to Ken and just ask the question, how do you believe that this misinformation is spread?
Ooh, yeah, I don't think it's that difficult to think about, because I do think that when people actually dominate the Western world, and also the countries and continents they actually colonize, they will spread the knowledge that benefits them the best. So I do think it starts with misinformation in the educational systems. Maybe for the viewers who don't know me yet, I'm from the Netherlands, but my parents are from Suriname, that's in South America. And Suriname was a Dutch colony. So even the education that my parents had when they still lived in Suriname was very Dutch based. And I think it took a lot of time for at least Surinamese people to realize that if we want to learn more about our own history, and not necessarily the history that people want us to know, we have to educate ourselves. That's very important. And I'm glad there's some type of research, I guess, for people to actually want to know more about their own history, or at least are aware of the fact that the history that we know is not necessarily the truth, because 9 of the 10 times the people that actually produce that knowledge is also biased. So yeah, that's my view.
Yeah. And that's excellent feedback. That, especially that last point, the people who are producing our education are biased, and having that knowledge when we are going through school, so like it's up to us to not only just entrust our children with the education from the schools, but also reinforce other things when they come home, and put into them the ability to challenge certain things, to not just say, okay, this is the information that's being given to me. I have full faith in everything that this textbook says, or this lecturer is saying, or this PowerPoint presentation, however your teacher is, passing along the information, that just because this person is in a position of authority, that they are correct, or that they are in the know. And I believe we go into that a lot. I want to go to Michelet with the similar question on, just from your perspective, how is this misinformation spread?
Okay, so both of you pretty much stated the majority of my argument of what my perspective is, which is the people who oppressed you and are continuing to oppress you are the ones who you depend on for your knowledge, right? We don't have right, like the infrastructure set up for ourselves to educate our children's, you know what I mean, like on our children and our people in general, like public schools, and just the resources to provide for the majority of us. So we still depend on them to educate us. I mean, which we could talk about that all day long. Why we haven't gotten that, like at least thought about that to do for ourselves. Like even if it's something like a supplementary, education, like you talked about, something that we can teach at home, something, like, okay, we need you to get these credentials. So you still have to go to the school to be able to pass through, the levels, whatever, to be able to take care of yourself. But as far as the knowledge that we need to be aware of, that's something that we cannot even expect. We shouldn't expect our colonizers, our oppressors to provide for us, because what would it do? If we are empowered by the truth, knowledge that we actually need, then their system, we wouldn't basically fit into their system. So I think it's definitely done on purpose. Certain information is left out, to keep us in the state that we're in. And I also add in, on our part, I think it's also just the stress and like the struggle of having to survive. Like it's other factors, right? Besides education, besides like school stuff, is other, we have other issues in our communities, in our own personal lives, that's going to take up a lot of that time and like brain space. And so I can understand why, we can always talk about, especially as educators, we might have a perspective like, we need to be teaching ourselves. First of all, if it didn't come naturally to you, if it wasn't a common practice, like already in your household, you didn't grow up with it, it's not normal to you. A lot of us, like when you think about a lot of people in our communities, they're working more than one job, or like working long hours. And so a lot of times we don't even have that time. We don't make the time.
Right.
And it's hard work, because the thing is, it's hard work. It's not like it's something very easy, but, for individuals to do. But if we start to, well, I guess we'll talk about more solutions later, but I think that's part of it is, is stress in just not knowing how, not knowing what to teach, not knowing that certain information is missing, because like, I think Kim just mentioned before, them, like our parents and their parents, a lot of times didn't even know this information that, that connects us, things that we need to know about our history and, about each other globally, and so naturally we wouldn't know that information.
No, and that's a good point that you make, right? That's very necessary to understand the situations, right? So we go to school. Parents have a child, maybe more than one child. They have to work to support the household. They are, in a sense, leaning on those teachers to have the students' best interests at heart. They try to make it out to parent-teacher conferences when necessary, and may not see it from the systemic scale, right? Because you're just saying, I have children, they go to school like I did. Now I am an adult. I have to go to work. I have to take care of my household. And then being Black on top of that, no matter where you are in the world, is a whole nother just thing that you have to deal with. Even in Africa, right? Even in a place where you are the numerical majority, there's still power dynamics that may be out of your control. So you have to deal with, some issues of nutrition, issues of, food availability, issues of maybe a drought if you live, in Mali or near the Sahara. You have other external factors. Nothing is happening in a vacuum. It's not like we're just saying, oh, we don't have this knowledge of one another, we need to do better at educating ourselves. There's so much that we don't even have time to acknowledge the fact that we're not educated or that we've been miseducated, because we are just trying to go through the motions a lot. And then that's just life, right? So I do want to jump into some solutions. So we know what the barriers are. There are economic barriers. There are, social barriers. So you can combine those to make them socioeconomic barriers. Then you have the cultural barriers of us being spread from one another and being told as African Americans that we don't have any culture, being told that other people don't like us, not understanding one another's history. So these are the barriers to unification. So what do we do? Knowing all of this, how do we make the change? Right? So Michelet talked about supplementary education. And I always talk about Google. And a lot of people kind of just throw it as an aside of like, there's so much information readily available to people today. There's no excuse that people shouldn't have the knowledge that they, need. But if you don't know what to look for, like Google is a tool, you still have to put things into it. If you don't know what to search, you can't use it. So you need something, you need guidance, right? So what is it that we can do that can guide people or give people some type of solution to get more information? Because what I've heard from the three of you is that basically there's just a lack of knowledge. And by there being a lack of knowledge, there's a lack of empathy. And with that lack of empathy, you don't really care about what people are going through, or you don't know about it. And when you don't know about it, it's easy to write off, oh, African Americans, the way what I've been shown of them is that they are, ignorant, they're violent, they're unkind. What I've been shown of Africa is that they don't know how to, their politicians are corrupt. They don't know how to govern themselves. They are, famished. They don't know agriculture. They don't know how to take care of their own food. They don't know food production. They're always looking for handouts. When I look at the Caribbean, so on and so forth. And so it's easy to latch on to assumptions when you don't have the time and opportunity to dig deeper and get more knowledge and then create that empathy. So, Dr. Kim, what are some solutions? Like, what can be done? And who would you say should be responsible or accountable for putting some of these things into action?
Yes, it's funny because every time you call me Dr. Kim, like my first thought is like, oh my God, I have to have a disclaimer and say I'm not there yet, but I'm just gonna try to stop doing that. I'm just gonna manifest it. But anyways,
Embrace it.
yeah, what you said about the internet, that was my first thought as well. And I would love people to do their own research, but maybe that's not like a realistic expectation of me that people will actually have the time, or maybe the how do you call it again? The digital capabilities, maybe, to look for the right information. So maybe when people like you, of course, and Keita and Michelet, or maybe myself, we come up with like an internet website when it's more easy to look up that sort of information. So I do think people who are actually know how it can benefit other people to have that knowledge are responsible to make sure that people will receive that knowledge, I think. And I also must say that in the Netherlands, there are several institutions and people that I know, like even people at my own university who are who made it one of their life goals to actually decolonize knowledge. So there are people over here who are really trying to portray a fairer or more fair portrayal of history. And of course, there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think it's also like a method we should appreciate that people take the time to do that, of course, and not saying that it shouldn't be done, but still, I'm very thankful for those people who are doing it. And I also see that other institutions like museums or even like cinema and media are really trying to tell the other story as well. And of course, those are also institutions we shouldn't rely on solely, because if you keep relying on other people to tell your stories, there's always like a difficult thing to do. But I do think if you combine all those methods, so parents can maybe help, the internet can help, institutions, educational institutions, but also more media institutions, and hopefully that will bring us further.
Right. I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
And before I go to the next person, we have a long comment, and this is the beauty of us being live.
Mm.
But I want to address, so Dr. McCrae, one of my mentors, she says, teaching our children to think critically about information they are taught as well as about the messengers. Akon is an entrepreneur and an entertainer. Of course, material attainment within the current economic system is important to him. If he's not a historian, sociologist, anthropologist, or an expert in African studies, Africana studies,
Mm.
what expertise does he have to determine how much focus on the legacy of slavery is enough? It's important to teach our youth that the sexiest, most popular, richest, sexiest, most popular, richest, on and on. And I think she might have got cut off because there might
Oh
be a
no.
limit. But
Yeah.
I hope she finishes the question. So
Hmm.
maybe Dr. McCrae split it up into two into two
Or you
comments,
can
and
probably.
maybe it'll fit the whole thing.
Can I maybe respond on that?
But
Okay, yeah.
yes, yes. Hmm.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely see all of her points, and I also say like, okay, we have to be careful which people we allow to talk for us or kind of be our, knowledge persons. But I do feel that some people will reach other people than sociologists and maybe other people with expertise will reach because
Hmm.
yeah, so it's kind of hard. Like I get what she's saying, but I also don't want to dismiss popular entertainers who are actually speaking on stuff like this. And I'm not saying that they should be like more legitimate than a sociologist, but still they can reach maybe other people than we can, you know?
So I completely agree with your point, right? Um, and I don't think she's saying that we should discount the entertainers, but at the same time, while listening to them, understand before. So I think this may even be something that can come to the defense of Akon, right? So think about it like this. If you listen to Akon and the entire time you're listening to him, you don't take his words as that of an expert. You realize that he's an entertainer. So the backlash that he received shouldn't be that potent because you understand that he's speaking from his knowledge base.
Mm.
Right? So if he says something like get over it and he's loose with his words and not very intentional with his discourse, maybe you can take into mind that okay, his expertise, he's an entertainer, he's an entrepreneur, he has knowledge based on who he is and where he's from, right? So it's not to discount his perspective, but don't hold him solely accountable of being an expert. So
Mm.
it's not to throw away the messenger, but to realize who the messenger is and to know that, okay, you need your Akons, you need your Cardi B's talking to Joe Biden, you need your Ice Cubes, right? But you also need a PhD or somebody who has taken the time to be fully educated and well versed in that area to bring some nuance to these conversations as well, so as to not solely depend on entertainers. The root of the that's the root of the Dave Chappelle sketch, right? Where he's like, who cares about what Ja Rule has to say at a time like this? It's not that we shouldn't care about what celebrities have to say. It's the fact that it seems like all we do is ask celebrities, right? So we have to make sure that we're not solely leaning on them and putting them in the place of an expert,
Mm.
right? So it's good to have a Cardi B be able to talk to Joe Biden, but then also have somebody who's a real political scientist and is knowledgeable of the Black experience talk to these political figures and represent our agenda as well. So
Right.
yes, Cardi B might be the entryway. And I believe I was having a conversation. I have so many conversations like this, I forget who I have them with. It might be somebody who is on this panel, but we were talking about like maybe we have Cardi B, or maybe we have Diddy, or maybe we have a Jay-Z or Colin Kaepernick say, all right, you are reaching your audience, right? But while you are the front person to reach the audience, you have a Dr. Cornel West in partnership with you. You have a I don't know, I see his face.
Dr.
And I
Claude
can't remember
Anderson
his
with the
name.
economic plan.
Claude
Oh, yeah,
Claude
yeah, yeah.
Anderson, a Malcolm McDowell,
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. It is killing me. But somebody who is an expert,
Girls, maybe, yeah.
partner in association with the celebrity voice, who has the social outreach, who has
Yeah.
the social capital. And now, because I already listened to Cardi B, if Cardi B is telling me to listen to a Cornel West, who me as an 18-year-old in 2020 probably never heard of, but Cardi B is putting me onto Cornel West. So now I will go listen to Cornel West. Maybe they're on a panel together, right? So there's a way to utilize that social capital and not have them, because what they'll do is they'll put it on a Ja Rule, right? And knowing that Ja Rule is not an expert, hope that he says something that they can dissect, and they'll make an entire news segment out of them dissecting him, not having the adequate discourse to really make the right point. We know what point he's trying to make, but he doesn't have the expertise to articulate it. So they'll jump on that, and they know what they're doing. It's a straw man argument. They know the point he's trying to make, but they'll elevate him like this is the spokesperson. This is Ja Rule, hip hop artist and spokesperson for the Black community, right? They'll frame it in that way. And we know how the game is played. So instead of having them play us, we need to learn the rules of the game and play them, right? And so being able to utilize these people. So I think that is a great solution, right? Using celebrity social capital, not discounting celebrity, but using their social capital to propel the experts. Kim, I call Kim Dr. Kim because Dr. Kim is who she is going to be. She's a PhD candidate. And I don't believe she's done all this work to quit. So she's going to graduate, and she's going to be Dr. Kim Dancourt. I know it. And soon enough, my words are going to be fact. So, but my point is, you are what is it? What do you call yourself? A hip hop historian, a hip hopologist? What is the title?
Academic for now. Hip hop academic.
A hip hop academic.
Academic, yes.
Hipologist. I just made that up, and I'm gonna stick with it.
I can definitely go with that.
So Dr. Kim is a hipologist, right? And so understanding the effects and the impact of popular culture in getting people to do things is very important. And if we want more people to be knowledgeable about the African diaspora, what it is, it only makes sense to use that social capital. Like I hear a lot of people talking about social media is bad. Social media is evil. And then you also hear people saying like money is the root of all evil. No, money is a tool that you can use to do good or bad. Same thing with social media. I always use this example. A hammer can be used to hit somebody on the back of the skull, and it can kill somebody. Or it can be used for its right purpose and build things, right? But are you going to blame the hammer for killing somebody? Oh, hammers are evil. Get rid of hammers. No, that doesn't make any sense. Somebody misused the hammer, and now you want to get rid of the hammer. somebody is misusing Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and you want to get rid of it, when it's something that we definitely can use for our benefit if we have the strategy and wherewithal to use it. So I believe that we can spread a lot of this information by actually, I'm glad that the celebrity thing came up and we brought up the Akon issue, right? So I want to talk about this though, because this happens. Oh, Michelle, go ahead.
Right, you didn't let me get my points. No, I'm just playing. No, but I was thinking also, as Kim mentioned, entertainment mentioned, media, entertainment, and I'm always thinking of creative ways to spread information, right? Like it's all of this stuff is necessary. A lot of us know, have done the work, have studied our history and know enough about it and know that it needs to be taught, right? Everyone would not be a historian, a scholar. We have countless books, scholars, all of these people. It's interesting to me. It's interesting to us on this panel. These are things that, we're really passionate about, and we'll do the work. We'll do the readings. However, we talked about people not having the time, not knowing how, and then some people simply don't have an interest, right? It's not entertaining enough. Some people will try, but just like with anything, people would need a little stimulation, right? So I always think about ways to put our history in to make things normal, make it the norm, make it something that people are used to seeing. So we can have things like Black Panther put a lot of information in there. It showed us a lot of different things, right, about our people. Even though it was it's fictional stuff, we need to get used to seeing it. So even if our creatives thought to dedicate more of their work to just, infusing our history and our culture and, and positive things that we need to become the norm. If we think like that, not just music, because you got certain artists that you can go to for this music, if you want to hear conscious rap or, or something like that. However, if we look at other forms of art, things that people are entertained by, we have to take advantage of the times and what's drawing people in now. People are into, what's in social media. We are into movies and cartoons and comics and different things like that. There are different ways to reach people. And I think we need to take advantage instead of just criticizing and talking about how people are distracted by all these things in entertainment. Use those distractions. It's a tool, right? We just talked about it being a tool. Make the distraction something positive. Make the things that people like, the trends that people follow, make cool trends that are in line with our agenda. So we have to, instead of I think we get real critical, about, really tearing down and criticizing how people are so, we just can't keep focused. We can't pay attention to this or that. Use what people are paying attention to, and let's use those same tools and transform it into something that can be educational. And I think also we could use, as far as solutions, how do we change this stuff? That's one way. So we can use, I think we need to be more politically involved, and that's on the local levels and everything like that too. And while I'm saying that also, it's something that we need to do, but let's be honest, that's going to take a lot of money. Everybody else in America or wherever we are, they have certain funds and stuff that are dedicated to, areas, what they're supposed to do. Money that's supposed to be allotted to every student in every district and all this stuff, right? Use those resources. We are going to get those funds, get all the funds. That doesn't mean depending on them, because we need to still, pool our resources and everything like that. But we keep asking, I think we expect a lot of people in our communities to do all of this work and they get no compensation. Use those funds. So we do need to make it a priority for us to build financially, economically, and get things done as much as we can. But also we can use the tools that are made available by the city, state, federal government, whatever. Use those, those funds, but being very intentional about how we're using it, the art and the, whatever information, whatever programs, whatever that we need to, to do, but we can still use those funds. So I think a lot of times we're used to politics happening to us and not us being directly involved in politics. And I see this because, being around the world in different places outside of America, people take politics very seriously, right? I think we have been used to just trusting politicians and the system to just work, and we can talk about how it's so dysfunctional, but we are not really involved. And I noticed this, like I said, I noticed that we're not as involved as a lot of other people are around the world with knowing politics. A lot of us can't even name like local politicians, who and they're making decisions on our behalf all the time. So I say that, and I also think that we should volunteer. We should, those of us who do have knowledge, especially like right now, I'm thinking about ways that I can help people, even though I'm not there physically in the United States. I'm still like helping with, where a lot of parents are doing homeschooling and stuff now due to COVID and all this stuff. But if you can lend a hand whenever you can, because we talked about people being stressed out and they have to work and make sure that these mouths are being fed, we can still use whatever time, that we can, because when we create that, when we take off some of the time, you can create like that leisure time so that people are not so exhausted and they do have more time and energy to dedicate towards things that we need. So if we think about, if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a person who can make time, free up some time for people, we need to provide resources to be able to create more leisure time for people to relax and actually be able to regroup and focus on what needs to be done. But yeah, that's my point right now.
I completely agree with what you're saying. So, and you and I talk about this a lot on ASAP. We talk about entertainment. We talk about fiction. Fiction is very important. Making things popular, right? So we're talking about right? There are these divisive myths that persist across the African diaspora of, Africans don't like African Americans and people in the Caribbean don't like such and such. And it just goes back and forth. And there's so many different everybody has something, everybody buys into this, rumor of what they've been, taught. And like Michelle said, we're used to politics happening to us. We're used to education happening to us. We're used to narratives being put on us and not creating our own narrative. And how is it that people have so much love for medieval Europe? How is it that people have so much love for, Greece and Rome and all these places that nobody in this era has ever been to or know, validity? Is not because everybody who's interested is a historian in reading books and is a scholar of, King Arthur or Caesar. It's because they made movies out of it. It's because they made fiction around these time periods. So there are your full historical dramas about certain eras in history, but then there are your full just Game of Thrones, your Dungeons and Dragons, your Lord of the Rings that is set with the aesthetic of a time period that is from a real part of, world history, but it's fictionalized to bring children in. You grow up with these stories. You love them into adulthood. You pass them on to your children, right? And now, if there are people who are just interested in it, when they see that aesthetic in the real world historical drama, they like, that reminds me of Lord of the Rings. So I want to watch that. And now you learn real history from that time period, and it just continues to go, right? So as African people, we have a lot of over intellectual people who will criticize things like Black is King from Beyonce or criticize Black Panther, right? And to me, it's counterintuitive because we need as much access. We need an imprint in the media as much as possible, because having that, just the visuals, just the exposure. And I'll tell this story. I lived in Guinea, West Africa, and I was talking to some neighbors, and I would just go around and I would just sit with people and talk to them. And they wanted to get to know me. And this is when I was training for Peace Corps. So everybody in this community knew that I came from the United States. So they were just happy to sit down and talk to me and ask me questions about my family. And one of the strangest things is a lot of people kept asking me, like, is my mother white? Because they weren't familiar. Because I lived in a city where there weren't a lot of televisions. Electricity came on when, it came on. And so there weren't many radios. So everybody just got their knowledge. They just knew each other, really. And so there wasn't that much outside exposure to even that much of the media. So me telling them about me was a lot of what they knew about African Americans. And I was like, why do they believe that my mother is white? Why are they surprised when I show them a picture of my mother and father of two black people, and they just, they had a black family, and then my brother is married to a black woman. I don't know what was being presented, but it was almost like they didn't realize that a black community existed in the United States. It was just, everybody all over the place, right? So the excitement and elation that came across their faces when they saw my parents, just being exposed to a black family in the US, it filled them with joy. And I say all that to say is that a lot of the times we just don't have the information about one another, and our exposure to certain things through media, through stories, through just the knowledge that other people are doing things, not even the full history, not even the full context. Sometimes just knowing that somebody else is doing what you're doing, or somebody else is fighting the same fight, can push you to continue. Sometimes when you are, if you ever played an organized sport and you're doing the exercises, you're at practice, and you see 53 other people doing the same grass drills and push-ups that you're doing. Like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm in this with other people. I have a team of people behind me, and we have to look at things in that way. This is why I am so passionate about African unity and understanding that this can help us propel. No matter where we are in the diaspora, we coming together is a part of our solution. When we are isolated from one another, we are vulnerable to continuously be exploited, because they know, oh, I can take whatever I want to take from Haiti. Nigeria is not going to say anything about it. African Americans not going to say anything about it, because they have their own thoughts about Haiti and why they're struggling. So these things are very important for us to note. I wanted to go into the divisive myths. A lot of these myths persist, right? African Americans are lazy, not knowing anything about Black Wall Street and all the communities that we built, Seneca Village, Rosewood. Africans don't know how to govern themselves, not knowing the history of Sekou Touré in Guinea, who denied France of keeping control over their money in Guinea once they got independence. And knowing that the French came back and ripped up all the railroads, tore down the hospitals, tore down all the infrastructure, and they had to build it up, not from scratch. They had to start from what they had already built that had been torn down prior to the French colonizing Guinea, or that area that they now call Guinea. And they built their infrastructure in to support their ease of life. And then when we won our independence, they not only have already torn down what we had built for, centuries, now they've taken what they brought in as well. So now we're at -3, right? So understanding that context and not the fact that African governments or African leaders can't govern, and believing in that myth. What are ways that we can combat these? I'll go to Michelle, since she claimed I forgot her the last time. I'll go to you first.
I think we basically said it with more knowledge. I think definitely more firsthand knowledge, which is why I take it upon myself when I travel. That's something I enjoy doing. I enjoy going to different places, and this could be locally too. This does not mean that you have to be able to travel internationally, but a lot of us are traveling internationally now, and we can be the spokespeople, for people who trust us, who know us and trust us. If you are one of those people who are traveling internationally, be more intentional. I know I have a lot of, I'm part of different travel communities, and still, even though I think that it's growing, the number of people who are taking interest in traveling throughout Africa and majority Black places, I don't think we're doing it more intentionally, to see and experience people and things for ourselves. A lot of times it does end up being, vacation, Instagram photo opportunities and stuff like that. I mean, which is, people, they're spending their money, they want to go on vacation, whatever, that's fine. But for those of us who do have, who are intentional about just finding out things firsthand, because I know I hate it. I don't listen to different conflicts and explanations of situations that they give on the news, on these big news, on these media sources, right? Because I already know that they're biased most of the time. They don't know the people, they're making judgments from the outside. And so I actually like to go and meet people and see these places and people up close and personal, get my own perspective and understanding on it. So I think that's one way. But also we have America is, and actually a lot of places from America. I've been in London. It's a bunch of different communities. I'm sure probably, Kim, where you are, there are different people, right, from all over, where we have communities that, of different people from around the world, and we can simply communicate with them, make friends with somebody. I know my mother works with people from several different African countries, or, throughout the Caribbean or something. So we have people who we are around, and I think we allow those rumors of, these divisive myths, they don't like us or whatever. We let these rumors just get into our heads before we even try to make a connection with people. And so if we just think to make friends, children in schools, they can be friends with anybody from anywhere. We can take after them, right? You don't have erase those negative ideas and things that you've been told, but have not experienced yourself or learned yourself. Just give yourself the opportunity to educate yourself. Give yourself a chance to develop your own ideas and thoughts, and just understanding other people and their experiences, their history and everything. Because I think when we do a lot of research for the people and the places that we talk about on ASAP, I find out a lot of times how similar we are, how similar our histories are. And, just through my own reading and understanding, when I go different places, I'm like, man, we eat stuff, we eat the same things. Our stuff tastes like this, or we dance the same. We look, what I mean? It's so many different things that we have in common. And I find that we have more in common than we do different. And so, I think if we just give ourselves the opportunity, and just be more intentional about stepping outside of our comfort zones and trusting second and third hand sources and trying to get things, ourselves, get information ourselves, I think, that'll definitely help.
Right. And I love everything you just said, Michelle, especially the part about understanding our similarities. So, Kim, same question on you. What are some of the ways that in your mind we can combat some of these divisive myths and maybe even come up with some stories of our own?
Yeah. I think most of the arguments that I wanted to make are already made. I think media in that sense would be like the gifts and the curse, because I do notice that some stereotypes that people over here have about other people from the diaspora are mostly based on media depictions. And yeah, you guys know I love hip hop culture and rap music, but sometimes the imagery in that genre is very stereotypical, or like 9 of the 10 times. So people over here who are only see stories of African Americans through rap music have like a very one-dimensional view of that community. But we can also use media to actually show different types of representations. I think that is very important. And I think we should also think about the things we say yes to, because the other day I actually saw an interview with a psychologist, and she was asked for a reality show, and she actually
Mm.
declined because they wanted her to fight on that show. And she was like, "No, I'm a professional.
Mm.
I'm a psychologist. Why do you want to fight with other psychologists?" And I do think if people would be more critical about the way they maybe contribute to certain presentations, that will help also. And of course, self-production, because I always say, um, I love the range. I'm just going to use rap music again as an example. I love the range within that
Mm-hmm.
culture, but I do think there has to be more balance. So for every Nicki Minaj or Megan, I would love to see a Rhapsody or a Chica. So I think that will kind of
Mm-hmm.
balance it out as well. And with regards to the Netherlands again, I do think 9 of the 10 times people of the African diaspora tend to entertain those myths for self-esteem reasons. Like for instance, okay, I am Surinamese, and yet also people from the Dutch Antilles over here. And like in the 90s, they were very stigmatized for their criminal behavior. And I do think a lot of Surinamese tapped into that because they felt, okay, at least I can feel better about myself because I'm not from the Dutch Antilles and they don't stereotype me that way, although I'm still black. And I do
Mm.
think we have to see each other as like one big family. Like when I go to the United
Right.
States, I also said like I just had another road stop. It's not that we're that different, you know. And I do think if we see each other as one big family instead of okay, that group is maybe better than that group, that will help as well. And what you said about your experience in Guinea, I kind of had the same experiences in the United States as well. That people couldn't understand there were actually like black people in the Netherlands, and that my parents are also black and my sisters are black. So again, knowledge and access to knowledge and information is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes both
Yeah.
ways, of course, for black people here as well. Like we have to educate ourselves more about black people in different parts of the world as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Mm.
We had a comment that I wanted to address, and I agree with it. So I believe it's true to some extent, but we should ignore those black people and concentrate on us, the ones that are like-minded. This is where we can make a difference. So I think this person was responding to our conversation, or what we were talking about with the people who are over intellectual and they are overly critical of, you know, our presentation in the media. And yeah, I just wanted to make and address them because they are there and they do have a voice, and I do want to speak to them, at least to say there's a better way that we can have that conversation, right? Instead of saying we shouldn't have this movie, or this shouldn't be done by that person, or to try to discredit the celebrity or the mass media. Because having Disney put Black Panther out and their money behind it in the marketing, that's how it got all over the world, right? So it's not wrong for us to take their money to spread our message. We're using them as a tool at that point, right? And then we are going on to, now Beyonce has enough money, right? She can take the Disney money, she has her own money, and now she can create her own thing, right? Now Ryan Coogler is not just the person who made Fruitvale Station, right? An independent film. He moved up to Creed and took big studio money. And he moved up to Black Panther and took big studio money, and showing it also showed our buying capacity. So now that they have to respect us as consumers and give us more representation. So so it's not us fully concentrating on just the negative, Nancy's out there, but to acknowledge them, because I don't want to just throw them away either. I want to give them the chance to have a little bit of reason, hear my reasoning of why this is good and how we can utilize that for us. Right. And that level up of their big studio system, and maybe enough working with them, we can build a Tyler Perry Studios up to the level where it can compete with a Universal, a Disney, or something like that, and we can produce our own films and have the same type of media market of Black owned entities. Go ahead, Michelle, I saw you.
Yeah, that's the exact same thing that I was talking about, even when I was talking about the political thing, using politics and the funds that they, that are already supposed to be ours as tax-paying citizens, right? We are entitled to a lot of those funds that we don't really take advantage of. I think because we don't know also how to take advantage, or we don't know that it's available to us. But also, on the exact same point that you're on with Black people using their art and using the systems that are already there, using studios and things that are already established that do have this money and the channels already set up. Dapper Dan, the one who's doing the designing for Gucci, he has his own. Yeah, so he's doing that for Gucci. And on an interview that he did on the Breakfast Club, he was talking about it's a lot of criticism. People were talking about, well, why don't you just have your own thing, separate from Gucci and this and that. And he had to explain how they have the routes, they have the resources and all of these things already established globally. And why would we not, use that opportunity? It's already established for you. It's you can collaborate. You can take advantage of opportunities just to get our message out, just to get whatever it is out. We need to learn how to use things and resources for ourselves and not just think about it. I don't think that we expect handouts, but at the same time, I think that we expect things. We're used to sitting back and expecting, well, because we've been done wrong, that they should just make it right. We have to actively go after what we need. We know who we're dealing with. There's not going to be a change of heart or mind before, we can't wait for it to be a change of heart or mind before we actually get something. We have to go out and get it. We have to actively, be a part of that change. And I think, so if we just have that knowledge and knowing that we can ask for things, we can demand things, then I think we can get a lot of things done.
So,
sorry.
Go ahead, Cam.
Yeah, I just wanted to say 9 out of 10 times those people are also very hypocritical, because they will still wear Gucci but criticize Dapper Dan for actually working with them. And Jay-Z, I think in his last song, what song was it again? Jay-Z with Pusha T, I want to say, but when Jay-Z bigs up Black-owned businesses, people say, "Oh yeah, you're 30 years too late." I'm like, okay, what do you guys want?
It's never,
Right.
It's never too late. And I was just about to quote Jay-Z, actually, Kim, which is, we're in sync with one another. Jay-Z said, "Show them how to move in a room full of vultures," right? We have to go into the room full of vultures. We have to go into the room, but we need people to go into that room and show us how to move, right? We can't be so afraid to be in business with them that we think that every time we go in, we're going to sell our soul. We have to have enough confidence in us, in ourselves, to know that we can go in there, meet with them, get what we need from them, and still come out as us.
Right. Without compromising everything it is.
Without compromising everything. Because there are going to have to be business dealings. They're going to have to be partnerships. They're going to have to be, if we look at our employment right now, how many Black people are employed by Black-owned businesses? right? How many black people work for black-owned corporations? But you're not gonna say I'm not gonna work for a business that's not black-owned. You just have to be intentional to say, when I work for this business, while I go in here as an employee, I'm intentionally black, and what I do with my check will manifest that. Like, you don't have to go in there, wearing a leather jacket and beret and a glove at the office, right? But what you do with your money that you take from that corporation is up to you. How you use your time when you're not at work, what you do in your community, like Michelle said, volunteering, that's up to you. So there are ways that we can still maintain and understand that we have to survive in a world that is, systemically set up with barriers. But we have to learn the strategy, and we have to learn how do I partner with, think about this. Beyonce partnered with Disney, and The Lion King has no people in it. It's set in Africa, but it's one of the only movies with animals that have absolutely no people represented at all. And so what did she do? She leveraged, she was in the cast of The Lion King. She made the movie. And then she was like, you know what? I want to double back, use those themes, use the Lion King name, and then have people see actual Africa with Disney's money. Now, you tell me that is not her giving us the playbook of how to move in a room full of vultures. That is a play that we can use. We can now say, all right, now it's not them using me, it's reciprocal, or it's me using them. I'm using their platform to elevate my message. And now, once I take that, my message is spread to people that it wouldn't have necessarily gone to. Also, a lot of people wouldn't have read it in a book. A lot of people might not watch the documentary, but they'll watch a music video.
Exactly.
So we have to think about it in these different ways, right? So we're talking about African unity. We're talking about combating divisive myths. We're talking about us buying into the fact that across the water, you know what this divisiveness reminded me of? Have you guys ever played Telephone? So there's a game called Telephone, and you start off, one person starts off with a message, and then you whisper the message into the ear of the other person, and it's like maybe 10 people, and you're in a circle. So the original message ends up getting to the original person from the last person, and the message is completely different from what the first person said by the time it goes through 10 people and gets back to the original source. Right? That's what this feels like. It feels like somebody said, hey, African Americans are in America, and there are so many opportunities over there. And when the people in the Caribbean and African immigrants go, they have easier access to business loans than the African Americans who were already there do. And then somebody else says something else. African Americans are too lazy to get business loans. Then somebody else said, you know what? The people in the immigrants, they work harder. And then the message just keeps getting changed and changed. It's the same idea, but this is not what the original person said.
Right.
Right. And so the information just gets diluted. And we're talking about more than 10 people. We're talking about information that is spread across culture, across decades, across, multiple collective centuries, even. And this is what we are combating, right? It's not going to be overnight, and it's not going to be in just one conversation, right? There are a lot of people having conversations like this, but I like being more solution oriented. So my next question is, how does unity look? And we'll go to Dr. Kim.
Oh, that's That's a hard one. And also it isn't. I think we discussed a lot already, so maybe I'm just going to repeat myself. But I think most of no, okay, then let me just start with something different. I think unity looks like knowing the codes and actually live by certain codes. So I think it's very important what we say about each other in public. I think it's really
Mm.
important what we do when we see another Black person in a work environment and how do we treat that person? Because unfortunately, you have some people who think, oh my God, another Black person, I am Black, one of us will survive. So they go like in a, oh my God, you're my enemy type of mode. We have to get rid of that. And the very toxic myth that Black people can work together. So if we can at least show other people that it's possible for Black people, and maybe more specific as well, Black women can work together, that's also how unity can
That's great.
work. Yeah.
All of that is great. And so, and I want to say something to you, Kim. We haven't repeated ourselves yet. Like,
Okay.
and both of you guys keep saying, I think my idea has already been said. The reason that this is a panel, right? Because even though you may have the same idea that you want to convey, you're gonna say it different.
Yeah, that's
And what you say may hit somebody different than when Michelle, Kata, or I may have said.
yeah, that's true.
They may hear it and like, okay, I get that reference, or I get that perspective, or that was a dope way to say that. So throw that idea in the trash can in your brain. So,
Yeah. But I'm sorry. Can
Michelle,
I maybe, oh, sorry. Yeah.
sure, keep going.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you a question when we talking about unity anyways. Like lately I'm noticing a new type of movement on the internet. And I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but it has to do with continental Africans in America. And they want to
Okay.
highlight the strength of specific African Americans. And they are not really open to work with Black people from other parts because they think it's important that we elevate ourselves first. And I can definitely get with that message as well. That's why I'm following them, although I'm not African American. But my question to you guys is, do you think those, how do you say that? Those initiatives can live together, like the continental African American versus African unity globally?
I think we've been beaten so much into submission that we need to find something to make ourselves feel better. And I think somebody said something like that earlier. And I think like this ADOS and these movements that are solely focusing on just the African American experience, or the Africans born, within the continent of the US experience. I said that the long way on purpose. It's very counterintuitive to unity. It's still feeding into their narrative of how they have defined us. We're still buying into somebody, because and we're gonna have an episode about this, like detractors to unity. But I believe that we don't need to limit ourselves. Michelle and I talk about this all the time on ASAP. I believe in champions, and champions are people who believe that something is wrong because it is happening to anyone, anywhere. Other people may fight for something because something wrong is happening to them, and so they're fighting on behalf of that. But to me, that's not really a champion. I need to know that you're going to fight against wrongdoing, no matter if it's you, your family, or whoever is directly impacted by it. So, an example of when South Africans came to America during apartheid and said, we're going to tell African Americans about what's going on in South Africa. The African Americans were fighting our own injustices right here in America. We did not say, we don't have time to focus on South Africa and your apartheid. We're fighting against our government. We said, oh, what's happening in South Africa? okay, we're going to stop supporting Coca-Cola. We're going to stop supporting anybody who has funds divested in South Africa. We're going to protest against apartheid the same way, with the same energy, with the same fervor, with the same media attention that we are protesting the wrongdoings that's happening to Black people here in the United States. It wasn't, no, let us handle ours first. That is dumb, because they're not going to just stop. What do we think this is going to end? There is no finish line to the Black freedom struggle. There's no finish line. So there's not going to be a point where we say, all right, I finished my black eyed peas and now I'm about to go eat my macaroni and cheese. There's not a situation like that. So it's about understanding how to, none of this is happening in a vacuum, which is why I believe is important for us to have knowledge of one another, to know what's going on, and to use our similarities, our similar roots, our similar history of resistance to that. The people who fought for the Haitian Revolution, when they won that revolution, they didn't say, all right, we're good. They made a proclamation that anybody who had been enslaved in the Western Hemisphere, if you come to Haiti, we will fight on behalf of you. You are free in this land. They were talking to us who were still enslaved in the United States. They were talking to us who were still enslaved in Jamaica. They were talking to us who were still enslaved in Peru. They didn't have to do that. They had unity on the mind. They're not a me first. Let's do this first. We have the same conversation when it comes to Black men, Black women. All Black women, take a seat. This is Black men's issue.
Wait till we done fighting this issue. Then
wait till we done. Then we can get to your right. That doesn't make any sense. It's not going to be a time where, all right, we're finished with Black men. Now it's time to focus on Black women. It's happening at the same time. So for us to diverge our attention in that way is antithetical to what we're talking about. If you're Black, be all the way Black. We shouldn't have to say something like all Black lives matter.
Right.
It should already be understood that when we say Black lives matter, that includes all of the lives.
Mm-hmm. I think that
go ahead, Michelle.
I think that our dysfunction sometimes, like within our individual communities, contribute to how we don't find unity, outside to see other people. You live right next to people. You live in the same house as somebody, and you still don't completely value them. You know what I mean? And I think it even goes deeper than that, like our own image of ourselves, as individuals. Then you look at our families, people who we're directly connected to. You look outside in our in a larger community, and then to think globally. I think it is very overwhelming for some people, and I think for a lot of people, we've adapted this idea how, our colonizers, to be quite honest, they think of how they think of things, how they think of education. We talked about it being, how they handle education. They tackle education as subject, one subject. Yeah, and instead of thinking holistically, but we as a people, and when we look at our history, no matter where we are, even, through the indigenous populations, anywhere where melanated people are, our education systems, our way of life, everything was connected, right? It wasn't just this one thing or this one person, or it was like how the family works together, how all of these different aspects work together to make the whole. And I think we have to get back to that idea. And I mean, that's pretty much my thought on that, is that we have to see each other as, all of each other, see all of our issues as equally important, seeing how, if one of them, if we're leaving like a weak link behind, that's making us vulnerable right there. That means our chain is compromised. The strength of our chain is going to be compromised because we left one, we're neglecting one, right? And so that determines our strength. And if we think about helping each other, if we help, I mentioned earlier about how I see some of our issues, like how our situations are so bad, is that we have other needs that have to be met. We have to, like, immediate things, like with our health, with feeding ourselves, with just surviving with the day-to-day struggles. If we help to alleviate some of those things, like help each other, some things for us in America are so simple where, you know, a lot of us, we can be good, like what we can spend on one meal, right? Or on one activity that can feed a whole family somewhere
Right.
else for a whole month, right? Like it's
Mhm.
different, it's small things like that that we could think about, how in one place, how you can be helping another community somewhere else. How can they help? Even if it's just with influence, even if it's just using whatever you have. It doesn't always have to be financial, but a lot of times we do need, you know, a lot of financial you know, a lot of help with the finances, you know, economic development. But even if it's something as much as like as simple as bringing awareness to a situation, so that would mean us knowing what is going on with someone else around the world, not just our own situation. So I think
Right.
we can advocate, we can definitely advocate for other people instead of thinking so selfishly, like, well, you know, I think that selfishness comes from this idea, this false idea that we don't care about each other, we don't like each other. You know, but if we just eradicate those feelings and ideas, which are false, you know, then we can
Right.
really get somewhere.
Yep. I
Yeah,
I
thank you.
completely agree. And just on that point, right? I want to answer this question. How does unity look? And I'll answer it from the standpoint of Afrikan Unity Initiative. How do we envision African unity? The African unity that's in our name. What does that really mean? And how do we plan on implementing that? So, our community and economic development campaign is called Bringing the Neighbor Back to the Hood. And that's a reference to us as Black Americans embracing this term hood. The term hood comes from the word neighborhood. But when you think about hood, you think about low income, impoverished, food deserts, you know, incarceration rate high, employment rate low, right?
Mhm.
And we've embraced the negativity of that to say that that is what being Black is, right? A lot of us believe that if you don't know this specific struggle, your Blackness is in question. We have to bring the neighbor back, right? So, not hood, neighborhood. Prior to integration, we had neighborhoods. We had the school teachers who taught at our schools, the principals. They lived in the neighborhood. They knew the children outside of just being the student. The doctor, the lawyer, the engineer, the banker, the professional lived in the neighborhood. So your only access to success wasn't seeing a criminal, right? That's our reality of growing up in certain hoods. The person who is well to do is some type of criminal, or maybe on the route to become a celebrity, an athlete, or, you know, an entertainer. But those are our three ways out of the hood that we see: entertainment, athletics, crime. But when we had neighborhoods, we all supported one another. We supported Black owned businesses. Not only, and do not allow people to tell you that we only supported Black owned businesses because we could not integrate and support white businesses. That is not the only reason. We came out of enslavement calling all of our institutions either African this or Ethiopian that. We had intentional connection to our roots. We wanted to be rooted from Africa. We wanted, I'm talking about 1830s until the 1880s. We were creating organizations and institutions with the name Africa in it, right? And you can see the same persistence in the Caribbean. If you study the Maroon societies, if you study the Quilombos in Brazil, if you study the Palenques and those other types of resistance movements that were happening with Black people in South America. So this idea that our only connection to unity is through our struggle is also false. We saw ourselves unified based on a common culture, based on a common root, based on a common land. And we brought Africa with us wherever we landed. So that is the basis of our unity. The way we get there is, so in Bringing the Neighbor Back to the Hood campaign, we have meetings, but we have communities in Sierra Leone. We have a community in Uganda, a community in Mali, a community in Peru, a community in Haiti, a community in Atlanta, in New York. When we're in these places, when I'm in New York, we're focused on New York and the issues of the people in New York and what they need to get done. When we're in Atlanta, it's the same. When we're in Haiti, it's the same. What's going on in Cap Haitien? We care about you. So you have to intentionally let the people know that your intentions are genuine, that we want to hear from you. We respect what you have to say. We come in listening first as an organization. We don't come in like certain larger non-governmental organizations and they give the poor Black people, this is how you need our help. So we're coming in with all the information and we don't value anything that you have to say. No, I've seen a lot of organizations waste money that way because they want to refurbish a bathroom at a public school when they don't spend time in the bathroom the same way we, adorn ourselves in restrooms in the United States. So you could have been clearing out well water and you could have been giving money to farmers, but you're cleaning and wasting money on refurbishing a bathroom. This is what happens when you don't take the word of the people that you are supposedly coming to help. So when we go, we listen. We put people in charge of their own community. If we have a message that we want to get to the people, we speak to somebody that the people already respect and listen to. This is how we pay our respect to the people. Because I know for myself, if somebody speaks my language, if somebody is from Atlanta and they understand my Atlanta accent and they understand my Atlanta verbiage, if they are giving me a message, I will understand it from them like this. I will receive it better. I will know that they have lived my experience and what they're saying isn't going to be counterintuitive to something that can actually be done here, right? So we do that. Then once we do the meetings and we take the ideas from the people, we start to fundraise as an organization to make sure that these projects can get off the ground. Once those are off the ground, we continue to support them. We continue to show them the value of an idea that came from you, the people, has been manifested. Do you know what that does to people? The empowerment that people feel when they feel like their idea means something, that they can actually contribute to the change in their own community. Then, so this is the micro. Then the unity comes in where the Atlanta community that has projects going on, the Sierra Leonean community that has projects going on, the Haitian, the Peruvian, the Ugandan, the Malian, they all meet one another, whether it be over a WhatsApp chat, whether it be over a Zoom conference, whether it be over like a video conference call like this one. They get to know each other. They learn more about each other as individuals. They become connected. They get inspired by one another, knowing, like I said earlier, knowing somebody else is doing similar work inspires me to keep going because I know I'm not carrying the beautiful burden alone. Now, not only are they now connected on a personal level, they know each other. Now they're starting to learn about each other's cultures. Oh, Sierra Leone, you guys eat that like Michelet said. Oh man, Peru, you guys have that. Then you start to learn we took certain crops with us during the Atlantic slave experience. the transatlantic experience, they pulled us for our expertise in agriculture, for our expertise in how to do certain things to help them survive. That's the part of the story they don't tell us. So a lot of the same foods we still eat, because a lot of the animals and a lot of the crops that they took from Africa, they took it along with us, and they made us show them how it's done.
And habits
They
and
took our
everything.
experts.
Those
Exactly.
African retentions.
Right. And that's what we build our bases on, the retentions. So now these people from these different communities, they're connected with each other. They're seeing that they eat some of the same foods. They're seeing that they dance some of the same dances. Oh man, this is my music, but I hear a similar drum pattern in the music from over there. They just find all these different connections other than just, it's not all about the work. It's not all about the community service work. That is a huge part of it, but it's about the connectivity. So when we talk about unity, it's like, I don't want to get too biological, but like when your brain moves, there are synapses. It sends shock waves, right? Mm. This is how your brain works. So when those things start to connect, you start to see, oh man, we're not that different. Matter of fact, we are the same. As a matter of fact, we are family. And not only are we gonna, oh man, you know what? Atlanta, y'all doing trash project. We need a similar type trash project in West Africa. How can we take that idea and make it fit over here? Oh, you know what? Sierra Leone, y'all doing a nutrition project. You know, they talk about malnutrition as a lack of food, but obesity is another form of malnutrition that we suffer with here in America. How can we take a nutrition project from you guys and base it in something that we can do over here? So now there's an exchange and project ideas. This is the Afrikan Unity of Afrikan Unity Initiative. This is what unity looks like. It's step by step. It's first focusing on the people in the place where they are, empowering them and encouraging them. Then you start to slowly make the connections. Once they feel like, oh man, my thoughts are valuable, then you start to bring different communities together. So now it's not like I have a Jamaican friend, I have a Nigerian friend, individuals connecting. It's whole communities getting to know whole communities. And so you get the variety of what a Black American is. You get the variety of what a Sierra Leonean is. Because everybody is not the same.
Right.
So now you know an entire community. Now when it's time for you to travel and you're like, okay, where do I need to go? What do I need to visit? Where should I eat? Where should I stay? Now you're not just going to Africa blindly. Now you're not going to Peru blindly. Now you're not going to Haiti blindly. You have people that you might be able to even stay with. You might have people to give you the real experience of that place so that it's not just a vacation. Not saying that vacations are wrong, but it's not just a vacation. It's more than that. It's a lived experience. And now you can't have a myth can't even pierce you, because I know that's not true. Like when I lived in West Africa during Ebola, right? And I was in the United States for like a week. My brother was getting married. And I remember them showing the same clip of like these people outside of some Sierra Leonean clinic. And they were just like slouched over one another, and it looked horrible. But I'm in Africa every day, like walking around, doing everything that I do on a normal basis. So when I saw that report, it couldn't pierce my brain as reality because I knew it was fake. Mm-hmm. Right? And so having that lived experience, even if you don't get a chance to go immediately, having the connection. So you just call the person in Haiti and was like, now I saw something on the news. What's really going on? And now you get firsthand knowledge instead of third, fourth hand knowledge with no propaganda, right? With no adverse agenda. And this is the Afrikan unity that we are building. These are projects. Everything I said is real. That wasn't hypothetical projects I'm talking about. These are real things happening. If you go to africanunity.us, you will be able to see how you can support those projects. Each individual campaign or each community has their own dedicated donation page. And those funds go directly to service those individuals. This is how unity looks. This is how we combat a don't like scenario, right? This podcast is how African unity looks. Michelle is in Qatar. Kim is in the Netherlands. Keita, whose internet logged off and his computer was having problems, is in Sierra Leone. I'm in Atlanta. We're talking to one another. The technology is a tool that we can use to make sure that we are connected with one another. We can have these discussions and move the ideas forward, not focus on the negativity, but focus on solutions. Mm-hmm. That is what this organization is about. That's what this platform, that's why we have this platform on YouTube and on social media, to allow people to see what is possible. Any last words from either of you? Michelle, just give any of your final thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I think it's definitely something for us to all just consider, even if you don't know, if you thought about just ideas that you had about people, but if you can ask yourself, well, did I learn this firsthand? Do I know this, to be true, or is it just an assumption? I challenge you to get to know other people rather than taking those thoughts or, those secondhand, thirdhand ideas, and just accepting them as truth. Also, just taking a personal interest in finding out more information for yourself, like history, throw on something entertaining. They're like, I like watching these different documentaries and stuff. I find some on YouTube sometimes, like, what is it called? The History of Africa with Zainab on YouTube. It's a BBC special, but like that's one way, I'm learning about different cultures, places that I've already been, a lot of them, and I'm just getting another perspective. But just if you're interested in history, or if you're interested, like whatever way, but again, being in touch with people, like it's nothing like a one-on-one contact, right? Like personal contact with people, and you can just build friendships, relationships, or just ask questions. Just build your curiosity and make it a priority to just find out information firsthand. And we can bridge this gap.
Let the people know how they can find you and support you.
Right here on the screen, mishmashworld.com and mishmashworld on Instagram for my business, and Mishy the Maker on other social media platforms.
Indeed. And Dr. Dancourt, your final words.
My final words. 2 points. One point, that we should not underestimate the power of social media. I know it can come with a lot of negative effects as well, but I do love to see people taking their representation in their own hands. So you have a lot of social media pages who highlight the beauty of the African continent, but also the beauty of the African people all around the world. So please make sure that you check your social media accounts and follow the right pages. And my second point, we discussed this like 30 minutes ago, but we talked about Deborah Dan, and he actually worked with Gucci. I also want to say I do, of course, support people who decide to work for Black-owned businesses, but I also think we should not underestimate how important it is to have diversity in dominant media, because they can spread a lot of information imagery. And if you don't have diversity in editorial staff or within editorial staffs, you still let other people decide what mainstream images is being put out there. And when you think about Stuart Hall, he talked about like perception as self-concept. I also want to encourage people to think about that as well.
And let the people know how they can find you.
On the screen, really supported KB and at Kim by Kim.
Anything that you're working on that you want people to know about, or ways that they can support anything that you're doing?
Okay, behind me, that's my shirt. It's hard to be what you hardly see. So that kind of relates to my theory of media representation and its effects. So I plead for different type of portrayals in the media and role models, because I do think it is important for people to see themselves on certain positions. So if you want to support me, you can definitely order a shirt. Kim, it's hard to be what you hardly see. And just follow my social media. I have some lectures and speaking gigs coming up and some other projects I'm working on. So if you follow, you'll be aware of that.
So they can get the shirt from your social media. How do they buy it?
Good question. They can slide in my DM or send me an email, info@kimbykim.com. I only have black and
Gotcha.
white right now, but in January, I'm going to order some different colors.
Okay, great.
I love that.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Indeed. And if you guys would like to get more information about Afrikan Unity Initiative as an organization, visit africanunity.us. Follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. What's that other one? LinkedIn, all at Afrikan Unity. It's very simple. Everything is consistent. Everything is the same. So follow us at Afrikan Unity. DM for any information that you want to know, how to get involved. On the website, you can, send a comment through our contact us page. You can email us at info@africanunity.us. And, we appreciate you guys for tuning in, for being just active in the conversation. We appreciate all the comments that we received today. And this is why we are taking the podcast live, so it can be a full, actual African diaspora dialogue, right? So it can actually be engaging, and it's different people in the audience who have different perspectives, who have different lived experiences, who come from different regions of the diaspora. And so it just makes for a even more fruitful conversation. So until next time, I've been T. Jamal. I love you all. Peace.